Alright, so this is going to be part 5 to what if Deku had Gentle's quirk. So with that being said, let's just roll the intro.
Bow in the presence of greatness. 'Cause right now that has forsaken us. You should be honored by my lateness. That I would even show up to this fake shit. So go ahead, go nuts, go.
So I haven't done this particular what if in almost a year, and I'm quite sorry for that. I don't really have much of an excuse for that. It's just that at the time I wasn't in a good mindset, if that makes sense. And after some time thinking it over, this is one of my more favorite what ifs, just because of Gentle as a character and things like that. So with that being said, I'm trying to branch out my content in terms of what ifs, and I'm now doing kind of real life what ifs that have to do with real life, and they're still gonna have to do with a bit of anime, like my video what if everyone had a grimoire. If you haven't checked it out, go check it out. I basically talk about a real life scenario and where people would get grimoires, and by that I mean Black Clover grimoires. So yeah, if you're interested in that, it'll be on my channel. I'll link it in the description if I remember to. So yeah, in the last part we had just gotten done with the first part of the sports festival, so the race as well as the cavalry battle. We also had the part in where Gentle had met All Might and basically told him about his story and his circumstance. So at this point, Deku is psyched. He thinks he could honestly win this, and he honestly does have a good shot at it. But not only that, there are people cheering for him, that being mostly his dad, Gentle, and obviously Labrava. In terms of notable kind of fights, the only ones that would really pique Deku's interest would be Bakugou versus Ochako, because in this timeline, or this what if, Deku has quite a fond relationship with Bakugou. He helped him during his training and has respect for each other. So when the fight starts, it seems very one-sided, and the crowd starts to basically almost boo at Bakugou. It seems ruthless for these two to be paired up, but Deku doesn't see it that way. Deku sees it as Bakugou giving his all during this fight, and Ochako, well, she's trying to find a way to defeat him, obviously not letting her guard down. And because of this dynamic, he understands that it's not ruthless, it's a way to prove to each other that one can be better, or that one can best the other. Deku looks at Bakugou and how he fights during this match, and he's interested in how Ochako would beat this. Obviously her with not having so much offense, but learning some skills such as hand-to-hand combat from the different classes. That being the UA classes, because I'm pretty sure at this point she doesn't really know much. It's only until the final kind of last resort that she had, the trump card, if you will, of all the rubble that they've been creating trying to fall onto Bakugou, only for Bakugou to just blow it up right in her face and taking her out. Deku doesn't really try to console Ochako. He knows that she did try her best and she's doing this hero stuff to help out her family. And when he sees her kind of almost break down, he can almost relate in a way. He wants to be something bigger than he is, something like a symbol, and to do that he has to become more than he is now. He doesn't see himself as, I guess, special. He sees himself as the underdog just because of all the things that happened to him and with his father. So we get to the Todoroki and Deku fight. Now this fight is a lot different. I would feel like in this case Deku would be kind of an instigator, and he would be more offensive than he was in canon. Now Deku sees like Todoroki as almost a prodigy, someone that's in his way to become this symbol, but he's not mad at him, he's not angry, there's no malice in his decision to see Todoroki as this obstacle. He sees him as an event or a person that he needs to fight to grow as a better hero, to prove to himself that he has a chance at this hero business. And he sees him, the child of Endeavor, as that. So the fight starts off with a lot of ice. Deku is on the move using the floor and turning it elastic so that he could bounce all around the arena. It goes to the point where he even turns the ice elastic, and Todoroki is trying to keep calm while Deku is slowly getting closer to him. It's only until Deku is within close quarters that Todoroki starts trying even more, creating so much ice that it almost hits Deku. I feel like some of the ice would hit Deku and cut him a little bit onto the shoulder, and there'd be a little bit of blood. Deku, not reeling too much from the pain, continues on as he slowly goes around Todoroki. The Todoroki is kind of confused by this, as he doesn't really know what's happening. It's only until Deku actually gets close to him using the elastic air to bounce off. And when Deku actually hits Todoroki, Todoroki doesn't stop moving. He hits the air. Todoroki's confused by this, and it makes him bounce even more. He bounces off to one side of the air to the other, and then from the ceiling to the ground. So this is a box kind of formation. Now I had this in the comments of a special move, and there was 2 names for it the person provided. There was either bounce castle or invisible box. So I'll let you guys decide on what name you would want it, but it's basically this kind of box that goes around a person. It's not too big, so there's a lot of room for basically rebounds. So because Deku hit him, it makes him go off balance and hit the other sides, making him bounce. As he's coming forward, this is where Deku would punch him and rebound him even more, and every time he would go in a certain direction, Deku would hit him harder. And because it's 2 forces colliding and not just a stable target, it's gonna have a more of an impact than it normally would. Now, as this is happening, Deku's kind of instigating Todoroki, saying that if he's the son of Endeavor, where's his flames? Is he not good enough? Is some random kid with no legacy better than him? And he's just constantly kind of almost trash talking at this point at Todoroki. Now, like I said before, there's no malice between them. At least Deku has no malice towards Todoroki, but Todoroki's kind of getting mad, and he's at this point where he questions why he doesn't just use his quirk, or the other side of his quirk. And as he's getting more bruised, he just decides to do it. He starts to use his kind of flames, and as this is happening, the flames start using the oxygen around him and actually do weaken the kind of elastic air, if that makes sense, as the original particles that were made to be elastic are being used to fuel the flame, if that makes sense. So eventually he does break out of the box, and Todoroki, being this bruise, decides to do a final shot using his fire, as he doesn't know how long he could keep this up, and Deku does the same with him. Deku does one of the special moves that his father taught him, that being the gentle sandwich, but a little bit different. So he creates 2 different versions of this. So he puts one behind him and he puts one in front of him. The first one he uses as multiple slingshots at once to ramp up his speed even more, while the other is to cushion the impact from Todoroki. So these 2 forces collide, and how would this go? Well, we do know that the gentle sandwich was powerful enough to kind of subdue Deku for a bit in canon. Obviously not Deku at his full strength, and you could argue that his 20% at that time would have been stronger than his 20% at the beginning of the series, but we just don't know. But this is a stronger version of that quirk. Now, as this is all happening, Deku's dad, Gentle, is just watching this go down, and he's in suspense as he doesn't know if his son could do it, because he knows Endeavor and how strong he could be. And Labrava obviously has a motherly kind of relationship with Deku, and she almost releases her quirk to kind of help him, but Gentle stops him, or stops her, as he wants this to be a fair match. So the 2 collide, and I think this point would go to Deku. Now I say that because just the entire kind of round, he was just picking on Todoroki, and with him not being really that strong because of all the beatings he took and the way that he was able to just cushion the blow a lot more, I think with the rebound it would go in his favor. Now, that's not to say that he didn't get any injuries. I feel that Deku would have broken an arm here just because of the force needed to do this and the way that he would block the hits. So yeah. And for those wondering why the gentle sandwich isn't getting like deteriorated because of how the flames are absorbing a lot of oxygen, it's because that it just happened super fast, that it wasn't enough time for it to do that. And that's my explanation of why it didn't really work. But yeah, so we get on to the next round. Obviously Deku would get his arm healed by Recovery Girl, and because of this he would get a little bit tired, obviously, because if you don't remember, that works off of your stamina, so he would be a little bit tired because of that. So in this fight, they're really pumped for it. So the match would start off with Bakugou rushing to Deku, and it would mostly be a close combat fight, with Bakugou introducing some of his quirk in between hits. Now, in terms of hand-to-hand combat, who would be better, Deku or Bakugou? I would say Deku in this case, since his father would have taught him a lot more than Bakugou would have known on his own, because it doesn't really seem like his parents teach him anything, since they're not heroes or inspiring to be heroes. But it doesn't mean that it's one-sided. Bakugou still has enough to keep up with Deku, although Deku does have more, I guess, experience just in general. So what Deku is trying to do in this situation is to try to pin Bakugou down before he could really use his super like large explosions. So basically put a bunch of layers of elastic air above him, just like how the gentle sandwich is. But Bakugou sees what Deku's trying to do, so he gets some distance and he tries some more long range explosions, but Deku uses elastic air to rebound the kind of impact, so that gust of force gets blown back to Bakugou and actually hurts him a bit. Because of this, Bakugou is kind of forced to either use stronger explosives or to fight close, so that Deku doesn't really have a chance to use it all too often, that being the elastic air. Now Deku is quick on his feet using the elastic ground to kind of off balance Bakugou, and because he doesn't really have this kind of, he's not used to having this wobbly kind of ground, it's not going to really be an advantage for him. And during these kind of weeks, or this week of training, they got to know each other and they know a little bit of how they fight. And I would say that during this kind of week and where they would have trained and sparred, Bakugou probably won most of the fights just in general. So Deku at this point needs to really step it up because he knows how strong Bakugou is. This would continue off for a while until Bakugou would get kind of frustrated, and Deku as well, as they see no change really happening until they try to do their kind of final strong attack, that being the Howard's Impact, and Deku, his, I guess, I don't know what you would call it, but the same move that he would use against Todoroki, but in this case for Bakugou. So you guys can tell me what it should be called, but yeah. Now who would be stronger in this case, Deku or Bakugou? It's a kind of a hard question, but if we say that Todoroki and Bakugou at this point were relative to each other in terms of firepower, then it probably would be Deku, just off the off chance that he's able to reflect enough of the explosions back that it doesn't really harm him, or at the very least slows down the momentum enough and where it nullifies the force. So this is how it would go. As Bakugou would do his spin and launch himself at Deku, Deku would do his signature move, and where he puts a bunch of elastic air beneath his feet and launches himself, as well as creating a bunch of elastic air in front of him, making the gentle sandwich, and he launches himself at Bakugou. When the two collide, Bakugou is basically cutting through a lot of the layers until he slows down and his momentum is stopped. So unlike Todoroki, in where his force was basically reflected back at him, Bakugou does get through all the layers, but the momentum is no longer there, as it was wasted going through all the layers. This gives a chance for Deku to just straight up sucker punch him into the ground and basically make this a knockout finish. With this knockout, Deku wins the match and gets first place. He is then congratulated by All Might, and Bakugou takes the loss pretty well, as it was a pretty even fight. Todoroki is kind of mad, as he never really saw Deku as a threat, and obviously he's not third place, it would be Tokiyami, just how it was in canon. But yeah, we then cut later on, and Deku notices some changes in Ida, but doesn't really pick up on it at first. And after that is said, this is where All Might takes Deku to the teacher's lounge, and this is where he explains his quirk and what he wants to do, and that is to give Deku one for all. Now, he wanted to see whether or not Deku would be able to win the sports festival, and if he would be worthy of one for all. He knows his story and he knows his background, but he just wanted to see if he was willing to go the extra mile to try to win something like this. Deku, I feel, would accept this offer from All Might just so that he could become a better hero. And not only that, but All Might giving something like this away is such a big offer, most people wouldn't refuse it. But yeah, so this is going to be the end of this part. If you guys like it, please give it a like. And if you made it to the end of the video, please comment down CS so I know you support the channel. So with that being said, let's get into the patrons over on Patreon. So if you want to join the Patreon, it'll be linked in the description, and you could join for $1 a month and you get all the videos early. Not only that, but you have a chance of getting a drawing from me. And yeah, so let's go over the list. So in our gold tier, we have Lyko and Dwayne Fenn. So if you want to join them, like I said before, it'll be in the description. So with that being said, I hope you guys liked the video, and yeah.